The arena was loud, the crowd was confident, and an undefeated Muay Thai champion was looking for his next victim. He scanned the room, smiling, fearless, until his eyes locked on a quiet, lean man standing calmly at ringside. The champion smirked. This would be easy. The crowd even booed when the smaller man stepped forward. They thought it was a joke. But they didn't know his name. They didn't know they were looking at Bruce Lee. What happened next took only seconds. And by the time the cheering stopped, the undefeated legend had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The undefeated Muay Thai champion had built his name on intimidation. For years he had crushed opponents with ruthless efficiency, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind about his dominance inside the ring. His record was spotless, his knockouts were brutal, and his confidence had grown into something larger than the sport itself. Crowds came to see him not just win, but dismantle. Fighters avoided eye contact with him backstage. Promoters marketed him as untouchable. To the public, he wasn't just a champion, he was inevitable. That night the arena buzzed with the same familiar energy. Fans packed the seats, chanting his name, waving banners, eager to witness another display of violence and victory. The champion paced near the ropes, rolling his shoulders, cracking his neck from side to side. Every movement was deliberate, designed to remind everyone watching that he owned this space. Sweat glistened under the lights as he shadowboxed, his elbows slicing through the air, knees driving upward with explosive force. He wasn't just warming up, he was performing. Then his attention drifted beyond the ropes. Near the edge of the crowd stood a lean, quiet man dressed simply, observing without excitement or fear. He wasn't loud, he wasn't posturing, he wasn't trying to be noticed. Yet something about his calm presence stood in sharp contrast to the chaos around him. While others shouted and pointed, this man simply watched. The champion's lips curled into a faint smirk. To him, this was familiar territory. He had seen that look before. Outsiders who believed they understood fighting, men who thought technique could survive against raw power. He saw no threat, no danger. Just another body that would crumble under pressure. The idea sparked something inside him. Why not entertain the crowd? Why not make an example out of someone unexpected? He gestured toward the quiet man, inviting him forward. The crowd reacted instantly. Some laughed, some booed. Others leaned forward, confused. Who was this skinny challenger? Why would the champion waste his time? The undefeated warrior thrived on spectacle, and this felt like another opportunity to reinforce his myth. He imagined a quick exchange, a crushing strike, the man folding under his force. The crowd would erupt, and his legend would grow even larger. The quiet man didn't hesitate. He stepped forward with measured confidence, moving without rush, without hesitation. There was no anger in his face, no attempt to match the champion's theatrics. He climbed into the ring smoothly, almost effortlessly, as though stepping onto a familiar floor rather than into danger. The champion circled him once, studying him more closely now, still unimpressed. No massive muscles, no scars telling violent stories. No aggressive glare, just steady eyes and relaxed posture. To the champion, it looked like inexperience. To the crowd, it looked like suicide. The booing grew louder. They believed they were about to witness a mismatch. They assumed the quiet man had made a foolish decision. Some even turned away, expecting it to be over too quickly to matter. The champion bounced lightly on his feet, tapping his gloves together, savoring the moment. He leaned closer, whispering something dismissive, perhaps mocking, perhaps warning. Whatever he said, it didn't change the expression on the other man's face. That calm remained. The referee hesitated but eventually signaled for space. This wasn't a sanctioned bout. It was pride, ego, and impulse colliding in front of thousands. The champion raised his guard loosely, almost lazily. He planned to end it fast. A crushing low kick, a slicing elbow, something dramatic. He moved. First, a sharp step forward, shoulder turning, hip loading for impact, the kind of explosive opening that had flattened seasoned fighters. But what happened next didn't fit the script in his mind. The quiet man wasn't there. not where he expected him to be. Instead of retreating in panic, the lean figure shifted just slightly, barely an inch, letting the attack pass through. Empty space. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't exaggerated, it was efficient. The champion blinked, surprised but not yet concerned. He reset quickly, throwing a combination this time. Jab, cross, a fast elbow aimed at the temple. Again, nothing landed. The movements were so subtle they were almost invisible. The quiet man flowed around each strike as if reading them before they fully formed. The champion felt irritation creeping in. This wasn't supposed to happen. He increased his speed, adding power, driving forward with aggression. His feet stomped harder against the canvas. His breathing grew heavier. Still, he couldn't connect cleanly. The crowd's noise began to shift. The boos softened. Confusion replaced mockery. Something was unfolding that they hadn't anticipated. The champion's attacks were real, fast, trained, dangerous. Yet they were missing by fractions, slipping past a body that seemed to exist just outside reach. Then it happened. A sound, sharp and precise, not loud like a knockout blow, not explosive like a haymaker, just a clean, surgical strike delivered with impossible timing. The champion staggered half a step back, more from shock than pain. His eyes widened briefly. He hadn't seen it coming. The quiet man stood in the same relaxed posture. No celebration, no taunt, just readiness. The champion felt heat rise in his chest. Pride flared. He launched forward again, determined to crush this illusion. But every movement he made felt suddenly predictable. Every attack seemed anticipated. His rhythm, once a weapon, had become a pattern someone else could read. The crowd was silent now. They were watching something they didn't fully understand. The undefeated Muay Thai king, the destroyer of challengers, was being dissected by a man who hadn't thrown wild punches or relied on brute strength. It wasn't about size. It wasn't about intimidation. It was about precision, timing, economy. The champion tried one final explosive charge, a knee strike loaded with full commitment, meant to end the encounter decisively. But as he lunged, he felt his balance disrupted, not by force, but by placement. A counter met him mid-motion, perfectly aligned with his forward momentum. The impact snapped his focus for a split second. His footing betrayed him. The canvas rose unexpectedly. Gasps rippled through the arena. He caught himself before fully collapsing. But the message had been delivered. This was no amateur, no reckless volunteer, no easy target. The undefeated champion looked up from a lowered stance and finally saw the man in front of him clearly. Not as a random spectator, but as a master operating at a different level. The name began to move through the crowd like a whisper catching fire. Bruce Lee. Recognition spread from one corner of the arena to the other. The boos transformed into stunned murmurs. Some fans covered their mouths. Others leaned forward with newfound respect. They realized what the champion had failed to see from the beginning. He hadn't just picked a random man. He had underestimated someone whose understanding of combat transcended styles, records, and public perception. While the champion relied on dominance built inside one rule set, the quiet challenger embodied adaptability, philosophy, and relentless refinement. The difference wasn't visible in muscle mass or flashy entrances. It was hidden in awareness, reaction speed, and the ability to remain completely calm under pressure. The champion stood again, pride wounded more than his body. His breathing had changed. His confidence, once overflowing, now flickered with uncertainty. For the first time in years, he wasn't dictating the pace. He wasn't controlling the narrative. He wasn't the inevitable force in the ring. He had chosen his opponent carelessly, and in doing so, he had revealed the limits of his own perception. Speed decided everything. The undefeated Muay Thai champion had built his career on overwhelming force. His strategy was simple and devastating. Pressure opponents before they could think, strike before they could react, and finish before they could adjust. Inside the ring, he was used to controlling tempo. His rhythm alone was enough to break most fighters. When he moved, others froze. When he attacked, they defended in panic. That had been the pattern for years, but this time, the Pattern shattered. From the very first exchange, something felt different. The quiet opponent standing across from him did not flinch. He did not rush. He did not tense up. Instead, he watched. Not with fear, not with aggression, just awareness. The champion mistook that stillness for hesitation. He believed speed was on his side. That explosiveness would be enough to overwhelm whoever stood before him. He launched forward with a sharp jab-cross combination, followed by a slicing elbow aimed at the temple. It was fast. It was clean. It had ended fights before, but it cut through air. The movement that avoided it wasn't dramatic. There was no exaggerated dodge or theatrical spin. Just a subtle shift, a minimal adjustment in angle, inches. That was all it took. The champion felt a flicker of irritation. He recalculated instantly and attacked again, this time doubling his speed, adding a low kick to disrupt balance. Again, nothing solid connected. The quiet man's footwork was almost invisible. Each step seemed to land exactly where it needed to be, never wasted, never rushed. It wasn't retreating, it was repositioning. Every motion had purpose. The champion began to realize he wasn't chasing a slower fighter. He was chasing someone who saw his attacks forming before they were fully thrown. Frustration crept in. He increased pressure, throwing combinations in rapid succession. Punch, elbow, knee, a trained storm of Muay Thai violence. The crowd could hear the power in each strike as it cut through the air. They expected at least one clean hit to land. None did. And then it happened, a counter so fast it barely registered. A straight punch snapped forward between the champion's combination, landing with precise timing. It wasn't thrown with brute force. It didn't need to be. It interrupted momentum at its peak. The champion felt the impact and staggered half a step back, more shocked than hurt. The crowd gasped. The speed difference was undeniable now. It wasn't about who could move faster in a raw sense, it was about who could react faster. The quiet fighter wasn't guessing. He wasn't gambling. He was reading. Every shoulder twitch, every hip rotation, every shift in weight telegraphed. The next move, and he responded before the attack completed. The champion attempted a feint, hoping to bait a reaction. A slight shoulder dip, a false step forward. No response. The calm eyes across from him didn't blink. The body didn't flinch. There was no premature defense to exploit. The feint had been seen through instantly. The champion felt his confidence wobble. His greatest weapon, aggressive tempo, was being neutralized by someone who refused to play the same rhythm. He lunged with a powerful roundhouse kick, the kind that could crack ribs. It came fast and heavy. A hand intercepted it mid-arc, not by absorbing the full force, but by redirecting it just enough. The kick lost alignment. Balance shifted. In that fraction of vulnerability, another strike landed. A quick side kick too. The midsection, sharp and controlled, pushing the champion back 2 full steps. The arena fell silent. This was no longer entertainment. This was a lesson unfolding in real time. The undefeated champion realized something unsettling. He was fighting at full speed, yet the man in front of him appeared relaxed, breathing steady, movements economical. There was no wasted energy. No wild swings, just direct, efficient responses. Each counter arrived at the exact moment it needed to, never too early, never too late. That timing made all the difference. The champion charged again, this time committing fully to a knee strike, hoping to overwhelm through sheer force. As he drove forward, the quiet fighter pivoted slightly off the center line. The knee missed by inches. Simultaneously, a rapid chain of punches fired, straight, clean, impossibly quick. 1, 2, 3. The champion barely saw them. His head snapped, slightly from the final contact. Not a knockout blow, but a clear message. The exchanges were happening too fast for him to dominate. For the first time in years, he wasn't the fastest man in the ring. Murmurs spread through the crowd. They began to understand what they were witnessing. This wasn't a brawl. It was a demonstration of speed refined to its purest form. No tension, no overcommitment, just flow. The champion's breathing grew heavier. not from exhaustion, but from disbelief. He prided himself on conditioning, on durability. Yet he found himself reacting instead of initiating. Every time he thought he had found an opening, it closed before he could exploit it. Every time he tried to reset, a light but precise strike reminded him he was still being observed. Then came the defining moment. He threw a desperate overhand, hoping to catch his opponent mid-transition. It was reckless, fueled by frustration. As his arm extended fully, his balance shifted forward. A blur moved inside his range. A sharp strike landed directly along his center line, so fast it seemed to appear from nowhere. The impact halted him mid-motion. His body froze for a split second, confused by the interruption. That was enough. The follow-up was immediate. A controlled sweep disrupted his base. The canvas rushed upward as his footing disappeared. He hit, one knee before catching himself, stunned. The arena erupted, not with boos, not with laughter, but with awe. The undefeated Muay Thai champion looked up from his lowered position and saw clarity in the eyes of the man before him. No anger, no mockery, just calm certainty. The realization settled heavily in his chest. He hadn't been facing raw aggression. He had been facing mastery of speed and timing beyond his own. Every attack he launched had been calculated against him. Every burst of power had been measured and answered with precision. He stood slowly, pride shaken. The rhythm of the fight no longer belonged to him. It belonged to the man who understood that true speed is not about moving wildly. It is about moving at the exact right moment. And in those brief, electrifying seconds, the crowd understood something too. Records mean nothing when someone can see your moves before you make them. The lesson didn't unfold in a speech or a celebration. It revealed itself in silence, in the stunned faces of the crowd, in the heavy breathing of a champion who had never been controlled like that before, and in the calm posture of the man who never once relied on intimidation. For years, the undefeated Muay Thai champion believed his record defined him. Every victory added to his identity. Every knockout reinforced the idea that he was superior, stronger, tougher, more dangerous than anyone willing to stand across from him. In his world, numbers mattered. Undefeated meant invincible. Dominance meant destiny. But records can create illusions. When he chose his opponent that night, he didn't study him. He didn't ask questions. He didn't observe closely. He saw a lean frame and assumed weakness. He saw calmness and assumed fear. He saw simplicity and assumed inexperience. That was his first mistake. Because true mastery rarely announces itself loudly. The quiet man in front of him did not boast about achievements. He didn't wear a belt into the ring. He didn't flex for the crowd. What he carried instead was discipline refined through years of relentless self-improvement. His movements weren't random techniques thrown together. They were expressions, a philosophy. Every strike had intention, every step had awareness, every pause carried meaning. The champion, on the other hand, had built himself inside a system, a powerful, respected, devastating system. But still a system with patterns, habits, and predictable rhythms. He mastered Muay Thai to perfection. His elbows were sharp, his knees explosive, his conditioning elite. But mastery within a structure can sometimes create blind spots. And blind spots are dangerous against someone who studies movement itself. As the exchanges unfolded, the contrast became undeniable. The champion attacked with force and expectation. He expected reactions. He expected fear. He expected openings to appear once pressure was applied. Instead, he encountered adaptability. He encountered fluidity. He encountered someone who did not fight by memorized sequences but by real-time awareness. The crowd slowly began to understand that they were not witnessing a clash of strength. They were witnessing a clash of mindsets. The undefeated fighter had always relied on imposing his will. He moved forward because opponents usually moved backward. He attacked because others defended. But when none of those expected reactions came, his confidence began to fracture. Without the familiar feedback of dominance, his aggression became slightly rushed. slightly emotional, slightly desperate, and that shift was enough. True mastery is not loud. It does not panic under pressure. It does not speed up when challenged. It remains steady. The quiet fighter never chased victory. He never overcommitted to proving a point. He simply responded to what was present. When an opening appeared, he used it. When a strike came, he redirected it. When space was needed, he created it. There was no ego in his movement. That was the deeper difference. The champion fought to defend his image. The quiet man fought to express skill. One was protecting reputation. The other was demonstrating understanding. As seconds passed, it became painfully clear that size and muscle were secondary factors. The champion was physically imposing, thicker arms, heavier legs, the build of a lifelong striker. But physical advantages mean little when timing is superior. Strength matters less when precision interrupts it. Power becomes ineffective when it cannot land cleanly. The undefeated fighter began to feel something unfamiliar. Doubt. Not doubt in his toughness, not doubt in his conditioning, but doubt in his assumptions. He had assumed that experience within his rule set guaranteed control. He had assumed that intimidation equaled psychological victory. He had assumed that an unknown opponent meant an inferior one. Each assumption collapsed in front of thousands of witnesses. The quiet man's philosophy of combat was simple yet profound. Absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and adapt to what is in front of you. He was not bound by tradition in that moment. He wasn't trying to prove one style superior to another. He was simply applying principles: economy of motion, interception, directness. That freedom made him unpredictable. The champion, for all his accomplishments, moved within trained patterns. Patterns create efficiency, but they also create predictability to someone who sees deeply enough. The quiet fighter saw the weight shifts before kicks launched. He saw tension build before elbows sliced forward. He saw breath changes before explosive charges. And because he saw them, he answered them. The arena's atmosphere transformed, from excitement to realization. The people who had booed now leaned forward with respect. They were watching a different kind of dominance, not overwhelming force, but controlled superiority. It wasn't flashy destruction. It was subtle dismantling. The undefeated champion remained standing, but the truth was unavoidable. Being undefeated does not mean being unbeatable. Being powerful does not mean being complete. True mastery lies beyond records. It lives in constant refinement, in humility, in the willingness to learn from every encounter. The quiet fighter embodied that mindset. He did not rely on past victories to carry him. He relied on preparation, awareness, and philosophy forged through years of introspection and practice. And as the final exchange settled into silence, one name echoed through the stunned crowd: Bruce Lee. Not because he shouted, "It," not because he demanded recognition, but because mastery does not need to announce itself.